I'm recording.
All right. I'll let just another 30 seconds or so pass as people roll in. Everybody comfortable here?
Yeah.
Great. I see it's filling up nicely. All right, we're just almost about a minute past, so I'll go ahead and start. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining today. This is day 2 of Autodesk University 2020. And today's session that you've been so kind to join is Unity Reflect Case Studies with our guests, Interior Architects and Valerio Dewalt Train. I'll be your host, Christopher Gonzalez, and with that, I'm going to go into our speakers page. So from the Unity side, you've got myself. I represent the AEC vertical here out of Unity HQ in San Francisco. I've got some teammates to come along with me today. Alicia Wong, who is our Senior Product Marketing Manager. She's going to be helping me with some Q&A. Helen Moyes, who's going to also be a co-presenter. Helen is our Manager of Design and Construction, and she has been working very closely with interior architects for the design and construction of our new and upcoming office in Austin, Texas. And then Leo Wynn, who will be joining us, our co-presenter, who is a senior solutions engineer on our team, who worked with Valerio Dewalt Train in the development of their app, which you will see momentarily. So with that, I will pass it to Alicia for a moment.
Awesome. Thanks, Christopher. I'm so excited to have everyone join us today. Before we begin, just a quick safe harbor note. Just a reminder, any views, opinions, mention of potential or desired product features are just intended to be for information purposes only and does not represent a commitment or guarantee of future product availability. Next slide. All right, so just some quick housekeeping items. So you should be muted by default. So if you have any questions along the way or throughout the call, please use the Q&A chat box to post your questions. I'll be collecting those, and we will have a dedicated Q&A portion at the end. So you'll have an opportunity to get some of those answered. We will also be recording this session, so an on-demand recording will be made available if you want to rewatch it afterwards. And then be sure to take our post-session survey. Let us know what you think. And there is an opportunity to win some Unity swag. And with that, I'll pass it back to Christopher.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Alicia. So to kick off the presentation, I'm going to do a brief introduction or refresher, depending on how familiar you are with Unity Reflect. And to answer the question, if you're asking what is Unity Reflect, it is a real-time BIM solution for design review. And to talk about what the workflow looks like, and in practice, how you may do that, you start with the plugin for any of the authoring tools you see here on the left. So it could be BIM 360 in the about to release new version of Reflect very soon, or the existing plugins for Navisworks, Revit, SketchUp, and Rhino. And from your authoring side, you then get the opportunity to publish your models to the Reflect server. This could be on a locally hosted or cloud hosted premise. And from that cloud hosted premise, you could then move it into an array of Reflect viewers across multiple platforms and devices. So this could be your Windows desktop, laptop, could be your iPhone, your iPad, it could be your Android, an HTC Vive for VR, or now an Oculus. And so a use case of this, of how it might look in practice, is say you have your MEP working out of BIM 360. You've got your structural engineer working out of Navisworks, and you've got your architect working out of Revit. All three designers and authors here want to collaborate their data for the project into one area, one viewer. What our server allows them to do is each individually run Reflect as a plugin, publish that data to our server, and then anyone on the viewer side can collect it all in one federated viewer. And so the example that I like to show or talk about is if you have your construction foreman on site, the core and shell of a building, and he just gets off the phone with the architect who calls him and says, hey, look, I just uploaded the new lighting fixtures. And the engineer calls him and says, and I just uploaded the new lighting controls. and the structural engineer says, hey, the structural data is input. He can hang up the phone with each of these parties and then use that same device, the same phone, open up Reflect, and now at the core and shell of the building, go into augmented reality with Reflect and see all of those updates in real time be placed where they're supposed to be placed. And that's the vision where we want to be with Reflect, across the project lifecycle from designer to implementation, and then ultimately to owner and operator. So to better depict what this looks like, I've got something pretty special. This is hot off the press. This is our latest sizzle reel of Reflect that I'm excited to show you all today. Yeah, all right. So I hope you're as hyped as I am right now. This is super exciting. We've got some really good guests here today, and it's time for interior architects to take the microphone. So I'll pass it to you all to introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Christopher. We're so excited to be here sharing our experience today. My name is Stephanie Long. I am Managing Director of the IA Austin office, and I'm joined by Matthew Dubin, who's project designer for the Unity Austin Foundry project. And we're going to be talking with our amazing client, Helen, about our experience designing the Unity space here in Austin on the east side, and some of the challenges that we faced as we entered into the project at the beginning of February, going into a fully virtual distributed time in the world, and how we were able to leverage the Reflect platform among other tools to relieve some of the pain points. So next slide, please. And so what you're looking at here is a visual or a diagram of what the typical delivery process looks like today, very linear, where the architect begins with some sort of an idea, goes through the design process, creates a model, and then parts of that model are distributed out to all of the related engineers and subcontractors for review and input, and then the process starts again. So it's really very time consuming. Next slide. And so what we're looking at now with the implementation of the Reflect platform is creating a project model that really becomes the source point of all of our collaboration with our partners, MEP engineers, structural engineers, contractors. So as Christopher was alluding to previously, this really creates a much more integrative, collaborative process, which ends up being much faster and saving time and money. Next slide. And so this is an image of the building. Unity will be going into the top floor of this building, new construction on the east side. And so we were able to use the base building architect's Revit model. And I think at this point, what I'd like to do is hand the mic over to Helen to talk about some of the challenges that she typically sees in the design process, and if there were any that were particularly impactful during a 100% virtual experience. Helen?
Certainly, thank you, Steph. Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Helen Moyes. I lead our global design and construction team here at Unity. So my team is responsible for partnering with firms such as IA to design our spaces and then get them built. So I'd say in terms of challenges my team faces, perhaps the biggest one is really gaining alignment internally on the designs of our offices to make sure that we achieve our project goals. So our teams are busy. They're working on 7 to 10 projects at any one time, plus other stuff they have going on, and many of them are dispersed across the globe. So that means a lot of meetings, a lot of design drawings, a lot of detail for them to constantly stay on top of. And so sometimes it can be really challenging to get timely feedback and comments on design drawings. It's very hard to pin everyone down, internal folks, plus our vendors, that's 20 to 30 people, to do a 2-hour page turn that turns into 3 hours, right? So the thing that I really value about leveraging Reflect is it serves quite brilliantly as a collaboration tool that allows us to have very meaningful discussions around design in a very immersive, rich, immersive way. And it ultimately helps me to remove barriers on decision making, which in turn means we're able to protect our schedule and really, tighten up the design so we reduce those changes later on.
Great, thank you so much, Helen. And if we can move to the next slide, I'd like to turn it over to Matt, who's going to walk through some of the elements of the design concept, just to sort of orient you as we get into the deeper details of the Reflect model.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. My name is Matthew. I think of a few slides about the concept, but I can go through this pretty quickly. But the concept behind this project is that VR and AR video games, the real bulk of what Unity designs and creates the engine for, they're just another form of storytelling. So the IA design team is really eager to integrate Unity's unique story with, as a video game engine, expanding its reach to many other disciplines and facets of many professions and industries, with Austin's own consistently changing and shifting identity. So the design team really achieved this by weaving the story of Austin's most famous and influential power couple, the hippie and the cowboy, into the architecture of the space. So these few slides kind of go through our story and our concept as, we tell stories to share our experiences, dreams, passions, and to help us connect with others. But most importantly, our stories make up who we are. Next slide, please. Imagine the songs and poetry told around the campfires, the stories shared with fellow cowboys being collaborative out of the necessity and individuals by nature. We romanticize cowboy culture as honest, authentic, rugged, and wild. Next slide, please. So the other side, the drifter, the hippie, on the other hand, travels with purpose but no set destination. We love hearing heartfelt stories of their adventures and living life on their own terms. Effortless, confident, free, non-conforming, wandering spirits. Next slide, please. So this is just goes to show some of our concepting. Originally, we put together a bunch of boards of ideas, look and feels of the space, and we present this to our clients. In this case, this was our look and feel for Austin, Texas, and the idea of how the hippie and the cowboy could really integrate, interact with each other. Next slide, please. And this is the concept, again, kind of explained in a more linear concept, where we have our city, what really is behind our city, that behind this place that we call home, and then looking at the cowboy and the drifter, this dichotomy, couple of these, on both sides of the spectrum, you have the cowboy and the drifter and this very weird influence, and then how that kind of goes into play with our concept, which was really blending the rigid and fluid together into this space. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show this slide because it really shows a few early process examples. And I think what really was beautiful about Reflect was when we started this process, as Stephanie had mentioned earlier, it was at the beginning of the pandemic. This was February, it was March, we had just gone to shutdown, and we really didn't have the experience of working at home collaboratively, figuring out how to get all of our information off our servers, and this was our first time in this situation. So we tried to design this project using the more traditional approach, right? So we used sketches, we're using SketchUp, we used Photoshop imagery, and it was really difficult. we were trying to download models onto our desktop. It was really hard to collaborate and to share these ideas because you weren't in the same space. So we got so far as we could to originally get buy-off from the client. But then once we did, we moved right into Revit, into BIM, where we could have those central models and we could use a more collaborative approach. And at that point, we realized how great Reflect really was. Next slide, please. So we used Reflect for the first time with the client for our DD presentation. And what we're going to show is a few snippets from essentially that tour or that path, which has now been updated for our CD process. And we've actually submitted our building to our plans to the City of Austin for permit. But I really wanted to start off by showing, just to kind of help orient everybody, that we're going to start off in the elevator lobby on the far left side, kind of work through our reception space, and then kind of plan southwest towards our break room, and then through the open office space to the other side of the plan on the east side. We have some other amenity spaces like the music room and another kind of smaller cafeteria break room, tea point, and then also our library and more our hotel desking area. Next slide, please. So right here, we have a first image of our VR lounge. So this was a really special aspect that we were able to bring to this office as a space to really showcase Unity's product, right? VR, AR, like this kind of video game engine. So this is an area, and this is a snippet from Reflect. And when we show this to Helen and the rest of the Unity client upon the DD presentation, as Helen kind of mentioned earlier, like we had kind of instantaneous feedback. We had AV, like the AV component from Unity on the line. And we had an immediate conversation about VR headsets. And we had a conversation about how do you integrate VR sensors into this space? I mean, how do we integrate cabinetry and storage? And actually, you can't tell by this image, but that entire, that wall behind the TV actually has storage integrated with power supply so that we could actually power up and charge all of our headsets. And we also allowed the space, we also allowed the AV to really talk about allowing for more pass-through for the person who's controlling the computer, et cetera. Next slide, please. And this is our boardroom. And this is, I think, a similar story. When we really showed Reflect, we're able to look at, I think, materiality of the space. So this is our future boardroom. And in the beginning, it was a lot more wood in the space. We had wood acoustic baffle or wood baffles in the ceiling. We had a wood wall behind the television sets. And again, this is actually a corner office space. So behind the camera is a glass wall. So again, in this space, we're able to look at it and understand it and zoom around. And it was AV again that came up with this incredible observation of that's a lot of reflective materials. And we needed to really introduce some more soft acoustic insulation. So we included an acoustic panel behind the televisions. We introduced acoustic panel in the ceiling. And we introduced the carpet on the floor to really allow for some of those sound waves and those more absorptive materials to really help out with the space. Next slide, please. So this is the break room. And in the break room, as you can kind of see, it follows a really similar story. When we looked at this space, we were able to actually, all of the furniture came from our vendor models. So our vendor for furniture, our consultant sent us all the models in place, and we were able to use this with our architecture models as well as our food service equipment, which was actually CAD, but we used that and looked at that in Revit, and we were able to look at spaces and understand how the server island over there underneath the light was interacting with the countertops, and how we could really look at alignments of materials and look at, was 6 feet enough between this countertop and that server island, or et cetera. So it was really a great experience.
Matt, can I interject something
Of
at this
course.
stage? Thank you. So just on that previous slide, you'll notice in the background an image, thank you, of, it says Austin, some artwork. It's really just a placeholder. We, about a week ago, took the local business on a tour using Reflect for the first time, without them knowing anything about what was planned for their new space, took them on the tour of the office virtually. And we will in a few weeks open up to a a local public vote to get their ideas for artwork. So it's really helpful to give them this visual context, this 3D context of the break room and the game area and the the overall design intent, so that when we solicit their feedback, they already know what we're looking for, and it's easy for them to partner with us.
Yes, exactly. And actually, to that same note, real quickly, we actually we actually gave our GCs, our general contractors, all access to this model during the bidding and negotiation process. And that allowed all these different companies, we had a few entities, look at the space and understand it. And in our client GC interviews, we actually had a conversation about, I think, feel like a more complex conversation about these areas of interest. So for instance, the reception, we have some pretty high-end boutique areas where we have metals, and we have woods, and this interaction materials, and we're able to have conversations about the best ways to move forward with those spaces. So it really allowed the GCs and everyone involved. I mean, I probably can't tell you, Helen probably could, how many times they've walked through different user groups, whether it's leadership or the Austin team or other members through the space to really show what it's going to feel like and look like in real time.
Yeah, and to your point on during the GC RFP, we IA submitted 100% DD drawings and other documentation, but this is the first time certainly that an RFP I've been part of where we sent out the Reflect model, and it was very interesting. The GC pricing that we went out to bid with 5 GC firms. The pricing between the 5 of them was the margin was so narrow, the final price, which I think is a testament to being able to give people a true immersive sense of what the space will look like. So as Matt said, we were able to focus less on the cost because it was all coming in within $100,000 of one another, but really focus in on the specifics of the project, like hone in on challenges and make that a conversation piece. That was really helpful, I think.
Yeah, it was really pretty easygoing bidding and negotiation process, and it really helps that our GC that we chose actually is pretty fluent in Reflect and has used it before, and the team members are really excited about this new software. So it really helped bring together the client, the design team, all of our consultants and all of the facets of that team, as well as the GC. And it really feels more like a collective process versus having it be like kind of these adversarial relationships to try to get the project done. So it's really exciting in that kind of standpoint. So here, this is the open office space, and this was actually a kind of a last second catch. We were going through this space in the DD presentation, and it was actually Stephanie that realized that the furniture models that we had were not lining up with some of our case openings to these pass-throughs and these conference room blocks. And we were able to actually look at what we had space for the furniture in the very beginning in DD, and then what furniture vendors sent us back for the actual specs. We're able to make those adjustments versus kind of getting that in the CD process or even in the CA process and having to either make adjustments in the field or just having alignments off by a couple of feet in the space. Next slide, please. Is this a video question? If not, okay. So this is just looking on the eastern side of the floor plan. And it's looking on the left here, we have our music room, then we have a tea point, which again is kind of like a mini break room, and then looking into our library space. And if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is inside the music room. And this was another really fun moment with our DD presentation in Reflect. And one of the first things that we talked about when we looked at the space was, where could we put some kind of cool signage? Where could we put some kind of cool neon, Austin-esque, feel? And we realized, hey, let's have it right behind, right in front of this curtain, this fabric curtain over here. But also, I know that Helen has shown this model and this image or these images to so many user groups that they were able to look at and understand, what the space is going to feel like. And actually, I believe that there is right now some current contests or some current voting to figure out the name of the space, what kind of the EGD or the graphics are going to feel like in the space. So it really allowed for some more, I think, like end user collaboration with how we designed, or this space is for them. We have to ask the question, like, what do they want the most? And I feel like a lot of times it doesn't always get communicated. Next slide, please. So this is the library space. In the foreground's a library, and the background, it's just essentially a library, but it's also like, I guess, hotel desks. So for some people coming to the office, etc. And this was a really great example of using Reflect too. So in this space, we're using Reflect, and actually this black mass in the middle is a fireplace. And using Reflect in the CD phase, when we were going through the model one day, we realized that our ADA head heights actually didn't work. And it really came through to zooming around the model with our project architect and really understanding the space, understanding the confines of the design, that we were able to catch this before it was too late. Next slide, please. And I think Helen can speak to this as well, but this was actually our DD slide of the library space looking the other direction. And it was within this space, and this wall over here with the cork and these lights was actually, on the other side was banquettes. It was actually when Helen showed this to Unity leadership that we actually came back in and realized that we needed some more phone rooms.
Yeah, it's been, as many of you out there are probably doing the same, we're definitely looking at Workplace 2.0, and after the pandemic, when we finally go back to the office, what changes we might make to the way we work, the way we design our spaces. So this was very helpful tool in being able to have a really good discussion with the local leadership team to just do a sanity check really on whether or not we're building the right type of spaces and functions.
Yeah, so this is actually the CDs, or this is the final design of what the addition of these phone rooms, we looked, and allowing for the phone rooms and the furniture vendors and everything to really integrate in the model, so we could really see it all at one time. And it really allowed for us to have that idea of what we needed in this space. Next slide, please.
And just to wrap, we wanted to end with this video, which shows a little bit about how Reflect is going to be used during the construction project or process for this project. We're really excited for this project to get started into construction. As Matt mentioned, the selected general contractor is well versed in the Reflect platform. And what we're planning to do is assign QR codes to the actual job site, which then can be linked to an iPad or any other device, such that the design team or subcontractors can walk through the space and have an augmented reality experience to see what the end result
so that's what I
will
want to show
be.
Next is actually clicking on a wall. That's great. Clicking on a wall and getting the partition up. That's what I want to show. You know what I mean?
And so we don't need to go through this whole video, but we wanted to show that as an example. And again, we hope to have an end product to share with you all again early fall 2021. Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to Stephen.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody today. My name is Steve Droll. I'm a principal with Valerio Dewalt Train. I'm joined today with Adam Farouk, who worked with us and one of my colleagues in helping to develop the AR app. Next slide. Before we get in and talk about the project itself, I thought I'd share a little bit about who Valerio Dewalt Train is and how we work and where we are and the type of work we do. So we have 4 offices. Our headquarters is in Chicago. We've got an office in Denver. That's where the Bell Tower project is located that we're going to talk about today, and we developed the AR app for. We also have 2 offices in California, one downtown San Francisco, the other in Palo Alto. On the lower left, you can see we do a really diverse range of projects. We pride ourselves on our diversity of projects that range from housing, which is one of the major sections, along with office, corporate work, hospitality. We really pride ourselves in being a sustainability first firm, and so that's an underwriting theme to most of our projects. Next slide, please. We like to refer to this as our toolbox. The 3 icons on the left are are things you'd associate with a typical architectural firm, from architecture, interiors, and master planning. What really differentiates us and makes us unique are the icons on the right. Within Valerio Dewalt Train, we have an embedded studio that really focuses on environmental media, branding, graphics. That group is called Media Objectives, and really helps help us design a full experience for our clients. And it was the Media Objectives group that got involved and helped supplement our AR experience here. Next slide. Just some examples of our work. We really identify ourselves as a design-first firm. That certainly manifests itself in some iconic architecture with the Godfrey Hotel on the right, some of our higher education and housing experience in the middle in Chicago and on the West Coast. But not all of the projects are typical architecture, and really pride ourselves on innovation. A great example of that is Art on the Mart on the left-hand side, where we worked with a digital display company summer evenings to convert the 3-acre facade of the Merchandise Mart downtown Chicago into one of the world's largest digital art displays. Really a great project. Next slide, please. And while we're proud of our work, we're even more proud of the talented staff that we have and the culture that we've really cultivated at VDT. We work hard, we play hard, we really focus on collaboration and innovation. Next. So here we are talking about the Bell Tower project. The project itself is the 400-foot tall residential high-rise in downtown Denver. Anybody that's been to Denver or is familiar with Denver has probably heard of Larimer Square. It's a 1-block historic block immediately downtown that, sorry about that, my phone, is really the heart and soul of downtown. It's one of the key locations for visitors, and really well known downtown. The site is just adjacent to Larimer Square. It is the only city block in the city of Denver that is bifurcated by Cherry Creek. So it's a very high profile site. As I mentioned, it's a 400-foot tall tower. By nature of the high profile site, we had to deal with a lot of city agencies, neighborhood groups, and it was obvious that we really had to do a lot to help people understand the vision of the project and identify with the experience. Next slide, please. And so there's really a transition of scale with the Bell Tower project. Here you could start to see the tower on the right, and much of that Larimer Square and that historic district is really low scale. And so as we started to meet with groups, there was a desire to really get an understanding of how not only the building design, but everything about it, from the ground level experience, the park. There was a promenade we were designing around the river. There was a real question about how the building would relate to its context, what the pedestrian experience would be like, and what it would truly feel like to be around the project. Next slide. Here's some imagery, and so, you name it, we did all the renderings, we did everything to help try and convey what it was really going to feel like. Here's an image of the park we were designing, and the promenade in the foreground that runs parallel to Cherry Creek. The tower is in the distance. Next slide, please. So besides the suite of renderings you would normally see, we built a physical model. We did an actual animation to help people understand what it would feel like, but it still felt lacking. And so we came up with the idea of an actual augmented reality application where we could take the building, put it in its actual context, and empower somebody to stand outside and see what the building would look like in its actual context. Next slide.
Oh,
and at this point, I'll turn it over to Adam. Go, Adam.
Hey, yeah, so I'm here to talk about assembling agile teams with Unity and customizing Unity Reflect with MapBox. Next slide, please. All right, so going with agile teams, on the left-hand side, you have the 3D modeling team. So a lot of the architects that we worked with for this bell tower project, we're in that bubble on the left, and on the right, like Steve Droll mentioned, media objectives, focusing on branding, UI, UX, and marketing. And then when you overlap these two teams internally, you have one representative from the 3D modeling team and another one from the media objectives team or UI UX marketing team. And when you overlap them together, you get a development team who is capable of customizing Unity Reflect. Next slide, please. So with an agile team, you need an agile process. So the media objectives team instills a process that's called an agile development cycle. So what we do is before we even move a pixel, we will research and plan ahead of time, make sure everybody's on the same page. We'll have a design brief and we'll come up with an idea and a concept before we begin to start coding or anything like that, or even start designing. And the most important part of this is actually you don't need to go through the whole cycle to develop a proof of concept. You can really start to get to a proof of concept at the testing stage of this cycle. And when you get to there, you can really get stakeholder buy-in, clients to kind of really understand what's going on, and then be able to have like a real dialogue at that moment where do you like what you're seeing, and do you feel like this is the best for your project, and so on. So next slide. So from an agile process, you also need an agile toolkit. So one of the big reasons why we used Unity were really three main big reasons, and you see them here in this diagram. The free learning, so you can go on to their website, and really, if you know nothing about Unity Reflect or even C#, Unity has made it really accessible to be able to learn from scratch. So you can really empower yourselves to begin that process and start customizing the application of Unity Reflect to meet your needs. And then obviously the seamless integration is a really big selling point. We were already using these programs, Revit, Rhino, SketchUp, and so it made it just that much more easier for us to integrate Unity into our application. And obviously the customization is a really big selling point for us as well. Being able to customize Unity Reflect with almost anything. So we chose MapBox because it had an SDK already available with Unity. And so it made our lives just that much more easier to develop a bespoke application and be able to develop it in less than 4 weeks. Next slide. And with that, you also need an agile integration. So like I mentioned, this is sort of a little bit of the science, the computer science behind it. So if you're a coder, if anybody is out there watching this, so basically you have these two scenes, your Unity Reflect environment scene, and then you have a MapBox scene, your scene 2. And those two are basically connected through C# scripting and the MapBox SDK. And the method that I chose to use for this was a singleton pattern method. And you can see exactly what that code is screenshotted above there. And basically what that does is it's actually a technique that's taken from actual game development, where they need to bring an individual player's data along to move through a scene. So what I ended up deciding to do was having the building act as the player and move through one scene to another to each environment. So then in that way, I'm able to kind of isolate both SDKs separately and kind of keep it really clean and talk to each other. Yeah. Next slide. And with that, you also have agile outcomes. Like I mentioned before, customize the Reflect viewer using the Unity engine. And then this includes branding, unique UI, full-scale geolocation. AR, that's also integrated with MapBox. So like I mentioned before, you get an agile outcome with this because it was done in less than 4 weeks, which was really, really fast for us. And it's never been done before. So at the time, yeah, so this is the outcome that we ended up developing. Next slide. Yeah.
Thanks, Adam. And so with the app developed, you know, it was time to take it out and test it on site. So here we are standing on site. The site is just in the distance. You could see the city in the background. Initially, we were able to bring in the project just as a wireframe. So you could see it ghosted here in the foreground with all the context in the background. And Adam touched on this, but you know, what was so critical was that the app be real-time linked with our Revit model, which allowed us even very early on in the design process, as we would iterate with the model and test different things. It's one thing to test it as a designer and see it in renderings. It was another thing to take our clients out on the site, take ourselves out on the site and actually see those changes in person to reaffirm that all the changes we were making were appropriate. Next slide, please. And so here's some video footage of one of our staff members in the lower left, just standing at the sort of end of Larimer Square, looking across the river towards our site. And you could see through the iPad running the app of the building being located in its context, being able to see it real time, the other buildings around in the frame and how the project would feel with those buildings in the background. Next slide, please. And last, back to that same vantage point that we were in the first slide, really getting a feel for the building, how it relates to the taller downtown buildings in the distance, and as you pan down, how it would feel along the streetscape as well. I think that's the last slide, or maybe next slide. So what's next? We've already started talking about that with our clients and the stakeholders, because not only were we on site with our clients, we were able to share it with all those key stakeholders we talked about, all those neighborhood groups, stand out in the neighborhood and look at the project with them. We were able to share the app with the design review commission, so people on their own were able to go out and view it, really starting to think about implementing something like this across all design phases. We could see it, obviously we're only in schematic design, still very early on, but just as we saw in the other example, carrying that through the other design phases and really making it an integral part ultimately when the project starts construction.
Yeah, and just to add to Steve Joel's note, I do think the future is really bright, especially with Unity. One thing I forgot to mention was, without Unity, Leo, Leo really pointed me in the right direction with the MapBox integration, and so for me, like, the future is bright, especially when you're working with an expert team that is really just trying to help the AEC industry kind of alleviate a lot of these challenges. And so I think for 2021, we're really going to see a lot more architects and designers start to take on C# code and start to build relationships with Unity, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of our industry is really looking in this direction to help solve a lot of these challenges with process that are a little old school. And so I think for right now, the future is looking really, really good.
I think that's it. Thanks, Adam.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie, Matt, Helen, Stephen, Adam. So now we have our Q&A portion. So just a reminder, if you had any questions for the interior architects or Valerio Dewalt Train teams, definitely place those questions into the chat window and we will get to them. Quickly, Bianca, I see your questions, so I will get to you in a sec. On Adam's point, I did actually want to open it up to the attendees. How many of you either have development skills or on your team have developers on staff? And that answer could range from 0, none, some. I'd just love to get a sense if you could post in that chat window.
Oh.
I don't know if people have the ability to chat.
Should I just chat or say? I don't know.
Some. Okay, that's good. 1 to 2, great. 0. Thanks, Adam. We have a few in each office. Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to get a sense of kind of who's on the call, what is sort of the desire for developers on staff, or just kind of scale. Okay, great. 1 to 2. Developer. Awesome. Okay. So it seems like definitely under 5, but it's good to see that that is becoming a trend in the industry. So this question is back to interior architects from Bianca, who's a BIM VDC manager. She's asking, was the lighting adjusted in Unity, or did the lighting come in standard with the design model?
I can take that. Thank you so much, Bianca. The lighting was it was from Revit. So going into Unity, we had to do some adjustments to make sure that the Unity viewer and the lighting output and the lumens work well together. I hope that answered your question.
Awesome. Okay, so actually this is kind of going back to, I think we've all heard enough about COVID, but I would love to open up to the group, specifically the speakers. Matt, you had mentioned working with the trades has been less adversarial, more collaborative. Have there been any other ways in which, the COVID pandemic has impacted your workflows or engagements with customers for better or for worse? And that's for all the speakers.
I guess I can go first. Yeah, wow, it's been, I think it's been kind of a whole new learning experience for ourselves amongst working, with our own traditional design approaches, which I think from office to office kind of vary from, hand sketches to SketchUp to Photoshop to modeling. And I think that we've really built this kind of like machine-like way of, I don't want to say machine-like, this very like efficient way of like understanding like what clients, what to like present to clients on certain deliverables. And I think that when I work from home, and it just really kind of made us rethink those and look at those again to make sure, like, are we really providing the best for the client? Are we really doing everything we can? Like, is this easy for us now that we're all, not together? And I think that's really, I think personally, where this Unity project, I think that's really where Reflect came into to really helped us, just being able to present something to the client that was easily understandable.
And I think adding on to that, oh, sorry, Misha. Just adding on to that, so much of our work as designers is collaborative. And what we've really realized is going 100% virtual is what we had lost in those sort of over the shoulder, quick questions, which then became a scheduled meeting, and everyone's calendar is suddenly filled up with Zoom calls and everyone's exhausted. But the more and more that we've been experimenting with these sort of cloud-based platforms where there's folks together in a space sharing ideas and getting more comfortable with that environment, the more we see sort of a return to normal or a righting of the ship in just that quick check-in, quick question, quick note type of collaboration that's so critical to our work.
Awesome. Steve or Adam, anything to add from your end?
I mean, for me personally, I think, because of this COVID pandemic, it's really sparking a lot of innovation and a lot of conversations about change. And this is an industry that is slow to change typically, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I think AR and VR, both of those platforms have already matured for a couple of years now. And I think now we're just starting to see that maturity through those platforms be more accessible to people in the AEC industry.
I think I might have cut someone off. Someone else going to say something?
It was just me. From an owner's perspective, I spend a great deal of my time traveling. So I was actually due to go to see Stephanie and Matt right when the pandemic hit, and I cancelled my trip. So we were going to have a design review then, you know, a design scrum for a day, half a day, look at all the materials and so on. So having Reflect actually was a good stand-in for that physical presence.
Awesome. So Tam in the question box has asked, how accurate is the AR model when you place a model on the building coordinate location? And I'm guessing that's probably directed to Adam.
Yeah, hey, that's a great question. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to solve. You know, with any geolocated coordinate data, you're really depending on the device that you're using to find an accurate location. So, you know, using the universal render pipeline and all that kind of stuff with your phone. You know, iPhone 12 just released with LiDAR. So we're going to see a lot more accuracy when it comes to these types of things, not just geolocation, but when you combine them together with other technologies, you can really get a more accurate coordinate. So when I first tested it, it wasn't accurate actually. It was really just based on the pure device. But then when you start to combine it with the camera data, you really get a better understanding of it kind of locking into place. So what I ended up doing is actually coming up with a couple of fail safes, just in case you're like in a storm or you're in a mountain somewhere or in a valley where there's no connection. So you can basically rotate and adjust with your two thumbs to kind of slightly nudge it if you need to bring it into place. So I thought maybe like if I had to give you like 8 times out of 10, it's gonna lock down into place. But if you're in a really bad like weathered environment or in a cave somewhere, it's not going to work very well. Yeah.
Yeah, and to add a little bit to that, you know, what the key, I think Adam was able to build in some functionality into the user interface that to allow some adjustments when we were out there, because you know we're still developing the technology, the app, and the software, and it was key to make sure we modeled some aspects of the site that would confirm it was at the right scale. So we were able to adjust that if we found it wasn't coming in right. And there was even an interface component where we were able to adjust the elevation. If for some reason it was coming in a little low or the camera was struggling or the geolocate was struggling, we were able to nudge it around to get it in the right place and the right scale.
Right. And then to add to that, the main advantage of going this route is it's markerless. So there's no need for a QR code. And what I've found through working through the team is that many people kind of fumble with QR codes and trying to find where to place them exactly on the site and all that kind of stuff. So if you can eliminate that for them, it just makes that user experience just that much more better. So it's for me, it was more about accessibility to other users that might not want to use a QR code or might not know how.
Fantastic. I think we have time for.
That's a big piece to add on to, because you guys found a way around the QR code, and that's super important. You're the first users to have integrated MapBox. And since then, Unity now has the integration with Esri. So we're getting more geospatial data accessibility. And what we didn't show today, but if you are attending other AU sessions, you'll most certainly see features for our upcoming release in Reflect, which is true scale AR, no image trackers needed. So super exciting. Stephanie and the IA team, you all have been using Reflect since our March release, which is several iterations back. And so the idea of image trackers being integrated in was the normal process of where to go. But as we've developed, I'm glad to say that in your process with designing our building, you won't have to do that anymore. You'll be able to just jump right into it without any customizations.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. So Paul, a couple of questions. Are the, oh, all right, my chat window. Are the models that we saw being represented on the various mobile devices loading the model, or is the model being streamed from a Unity Reflect server? Question 1. And then question 2, if it is via a server, can Reflect be run on premise and then have the model streamed to the device?
Oh, I think that's a question for me, maybe.
Yeah, Adam, I think you'd be best. Go for it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so just to quickly answer your question, let me just read this. So the model is being screened by the Unity Reflect server. So that had a diagram about how that's kind of working through this like singleton pattern method. Basically, I'm separating the two environments with different scenes, and basically I'm allowing the Reflect server to load in the model real time, and then push that model to another scene that's where the MapBox environment is. So essentially, and then when it's done in that environment, it will pull that model, close out that scene, and bring it back into the Unity Reflect environment. So that's sort of how that works. I hope that answers your question.
Right, and then Tam has a second question, and this might be for Leo on our side. Can we upload a Navisworks model into an AR app? For the context, they want to use Navisworks to coordinate MEP models for QA/QC.
Yeah, so you can definitely upload Navisworks model into a Reflect project. We could also federate Revit models with a Navis model as well. So if you're working on the design, you can actually merge the two together in the same project to do QA/QC on site.
Awesome, thanks. Last call for any other questions. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to Christopher.
If there's anything left, post in the chat and we will get back to you here. If you haven't already, scan our QR code with your phone, get some free swag here, and it'd be good to know just who joined the session. You can use, you get a free trial of Reflect today if you scan this QR code. You can also contact myself or someone like myself through this area here, this QR code. And so lastly, I just want to say thank you so much to our friends and partners, Interior Architects and Valerio Dewalt Train. This has been incredible. Your case studies are amazing. I love the two very different case studies. Your time here is so valuable to us, and I hope everyone learned something. So we look forward to working with you all again. We look forward to building new relationships with others on the call. And thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of AU and week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for including us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.